Hi, and welcome to Best in Tesla. Today we're going to take a little peek at the Volkswagen ID4 and compare it to the Tesla Model Y, that it is a direct competitor to. But this is not a review. I haven't driven the car, even seen the car in real life, but the same goes for the Model Y. So this is just to look at the specs, to see what has one of the biggest automakers in the world come up with, and how does it compare to the specs of the Model Y. So let's take a closer look and let's dive right in. So we are going to take a look at the ID4 First Max, because that is the one that gets the closest to the Model Y, that has the automatic trunk and the keyless options and so on, something that the Model Y comes with. Something the ID4 does not have is all-wheel drive, something the Model Y has. So this is of course a big pro for the Tesla even before we look at the specs, because just like I tried with the ID3 or the Kia Neo or Mazda MX-30, they are all only front wheel or rear wheel drive, and they do tend to spin their wheels when you floor it, even though the acceleration is much lower than the Tesla. But the Tesla, on the other hand, with their all-wheel drive, just stick to the ground and can do a 0 to 60 in 3.3 seconds with no spinning at the wheel. On a wet road, it don't care. It just sticks to the ground like you wouldn't believe. But the ID4 only comes with rear-wheel drive. But the price of the ID4's First Max and the Model Y long range is very similar in the US. We don't have the prices yet here in Denmark for the Model Y, and none of these cars are here yet, so we're going to compare the prices in the US, and they are both in the SUV and crossover segment, and they can both get a tow hitch for us Europeans, so they are a very good comparison. So when we look at the spec sheets of these two SUVs, that is very similar in price. They are not so similar on the specs. The range of the ID4 is very good, 488 kilometers VLTP, so just above 300 miles. So that's very good and very close to the Model Y's range of 505 kilometers. But as the Ford Mustang Mach-E, they do need to put in a bit more batteries to get this range. The ID4 comes with a 77 kilowatt hour battery pack, so it does about 6.3 kilometers per kilowatt hour, where the Model Y only has a 75 kilowatt hour battery and has an efficiency of 6.7 kilometers per kilowatt hour. So here the two models are very close to each other. Tesla comes out with a tiny bit more range, but that is also pretty much the only specs where the ID4 really can keep up with the Model Y, because the charging speed of the ID4 is only 125 kilowatt. That is a bit disappointing. The Volkswagen Group has the Porsche Taycan that can do 270 kilowatt charging. So I had hoped for more, maybe like 200 kilowatt or 175 kilowatt would have been great. But I guess it's just a very expensive technology to get in there. But here the Model Y just trumped the ID3 with twice the charging speed with 250 kilowatt. Then there is a top speed. The ID4 only does 160 kilometers an hour. I know this does not matter to many, but I have been many times to Germany, and on the highway where there is no speed limit, I tend to drive about 150 kilometers, also because that is where I can still use my autopilot. But when I am driving 150 kilometers an hour, I am constantly being overtaken by locals blazing past. So to many people in Germany, this will not be sufficient. And if you're driving 150 in the ID4, that is very close to its top speed, I can only imagine how fast it's gonna suck those batteries dry. So no matter if it is something you care about or not, the top speed of the ID4 cannot match the Model Y long range that can do 217 kilometers an hour. And the acceleration of the ID4 is probably the most disappointing thing, because the 0 to 100 kilometers an hour is even slower than the Kia e-Niro. The ID4 does it in only 8.5 seconds. That is kind of slow for an EV. That is ice territory. You remember those cars, the polluting slow cars that people used to love? Yeah. So the long range Model Y does this in just 5.1 seconds. Or for you Americans, 0 to 60 in 4.8 seconds. So this is not even comparable. These two cars are much further from each other than the Ford Mark E and the Model Y was. The ID4 just kind of gets destroyed here by the Model Y's specs. And the ID4 is not a converted ICE car like we saw with the Kia e-Niro. That is why all these cars don't have a frunk, because that is where the engine and everything is. But the ID4 is an EV built from the ground up with the new MEB skateboard and everything from one of the biggest automakers in the world that is pushing the hardest for electric cars. And when they go head to head with a Tesla, it just really shows how far behind they are in this game. And we also have the same problem as I talked about in the video about the Mark E, that if I buy the ID4, I cannot charge at the Tesla chargers, and therefore I will pay twice as much for charging on the go as I do with my Tesla, and of course has a smaller charging network. So to me, this is a very big pro for the Teslas. Faster charging, bigger charging network, more stalls at every station, and half the price. This is kind of nuts. As I said before, this car will sell very well. Not like the Model Y, but it will do very well. And many people don't know or don't care about all these specs. They just want a Volkswagen SUV and boom, here it is. But when we look at the specs and the charging and everything, where the Tesla is just so superior for the same kind of price, the Tesla is just, once again, the logical choice. I know many people will not look at this logical, but if you do, you can't deny just how far ahead Tesla is here. And remember, you can pay a little bit more and get full self-driving with your Model Y. You can never get that with your ID4. If Volkswagen come out with full self-driving, you have to buy a whole new car. And we have seen just how good the full self-driving beta is. And that will be released this year to all of us. You still have to pay attention, but your car will be able to pretty much drive you from A to B. Your ID4 will never be able to do that. And we have seen just how big problems Volkswagen had with their software of the ID3. That is still not fixed and still have many software bugs. You should be able to take your ID3 into the service center sometime here in February this year to get a manual update, and from there on out it should be able to do an over-the-air update. But I don't believe that the ID3 or the ID4 owners will see as many great updates as we get with Tesla. So just another area where I think the Tesla is very superior to the Volkswagen. And you will get this beautiful 15-inch touchscreens that looks pretty much like an iPad Pro. And the ID4 get this piano black plastic screen that looks like the original iPad at best. So I personally prefer the cockpit of the Model Y over the cockpit of the ID4, and also the look of the Model Y compared to the ID4. I prefer this smoother look of the Y compared to the more boxy SUV look of the ID4, but that's of course a very personal thing. So when I look at the ID4, it does look like a great electric SUV. There is nothing wrong with it. It is just when we compare it to a Tesla, it just falls short on pretty much every category. And this just shows us that even though Volkswagen have been around forever, it is not the same to build a great ICE car as building a great EV, because it's all just tech driven. It is more a computer on wheels. You have to be good at software. And as Danish, Senior Director of Automotive at NVIDIA, as he said about his thought on the complexity of in-vehicle software, he said, the key here is taking the distributed system in the car, dozens if not hundreds of applications, and centralizing everything. This is very complex, especially with a car where safety level is critical. You can't just flip a switch and become a software company. So true, as we also saw with the Polestar 2 that has been recalled 2 times already because of software issues with safety critical problems. Yeah, not very good. So yeah, the ID4 is not a bad car, but to me it's just a prime example of how hard this is for the old automaker. Volkswagen is pushing the hardest, spending $50 billion to go electric, and many have said, just wait little Tesla fanboy, Volkswagen will just run over Tesla. But to me the ID4 is just showing that Tesla is so far ahead and is only accelerating with new technology, and cannot see why anyone here in Europe would choose the ID4 over the made in German Model Y that is coming out this summer. Of course, many will choose the ID4, but it's simply just not the logical choice. You just get a much better electric car with the Tesla, better software, better charging network, and also cheaper charging, and it's just a much more fun car to drive. I had hoped more from the ID4. It probably will do very well, and people that will get it will be happy with it, and best of all, will probably never go back to an ICE car. So that is a win, but I had hoped that Volkswagen, one of the biggest automakers in the world, that could come out with something by now that could rival the Tesla's midsize model. But they kind of fall a bit short here. I would even think it could have some problems in the US because the Ford Mustang Mach-E is much closer to the specs of the Tesla and is an all-wheel drive and should be a really fun car to drive. So why would people in the US even choose the ID4 over the Ford? But again, both of these are not being made in the hundreds of thousands here in 2021, so they will both probably sell all they make and make more and more people switch to EVs, and at the end of the day, that's what we want. And thank you for watching, and until next time, take care out there and be nice.